Good evening, and also tonight, Chile miners who are trapped underground for more than 3 months should be able to be rescued by tonight. But first, Western Australia's Attorney General wants a review of the police disciplinary procedures after 2 officers escaped from prosecution despite tasering a man 13 times in a Perth watch house. Susan Scott begins our coverage.
The call comes as New South Wales Police investigate the circumstances surrounding the death of a man who died after being tasered by officers during a domestic dispute in Sydney overnight. The Perth case centres around an Aboriginal man who was tasered 13 times after refusing a strip search in the East Perth lockup in 2008. CCTV footage of the incident shows the man lying on the ground surrounded by officers and screaming as the tasers are discharged. The officers involved were fined following an internal investigation but still work in the police force. Footage of the incident was released yesterday as part of a report by the state's Corruption and Crime Commission. The report found West Australian police were increasingly using taser guns to get suspects to comply with orders, but the weapons were originally introduced to prevent injury and cut the use of guns. It also found that there was an increasing and disproportionate use of tasers on Indigenous people. But the report concluded the taser was an effective weapon and is most used reasonably by officers. Acting Commissioner of Western Australia Police Chris Dawson said the 2008 incident was unacceptable. The chairman of WA's Death in Custody Watch Committee, Mark Newhouse, said the CCC report confirmed what he had been hearing anecdotally, particularly from Aboriginal people. Susan Scott, DHK News.
Subiaco Oval has been officially renamed as Patterson Stadium, but Subiaco Council has vowed to fight the change, describing it as offensive and short-sighted move. Braden Edwards files this report.
The West Australian Football Commission can now change the internal signs at the Oval to Patterson Stadium, but they will face tough opposition getting approval for new signs around the Subiaco area. It is believed stockbroking firm Patterson Security have paid approximately $3.5 million over 4 years for the naming rights.
Deputy Mayor Paul Clement said the council would seek legal action to block the move. He said there is a lot of heritage at this site and it was very short-sighted of them to change the name. The community has been very vocal about their opposition to the change, and the Subiaco Council will act on their behalf.
I was surprised because I was wondering what the purpose was of changing its name only for 3 years. So is it just like they want to make money? They're selling the name of the Oval.
Look, I'm fairly horrified actually at the commercialisation of an entirely community facility.
It is familiar territory for the council, as they blocked a multi-million-dollar move for the Oval to be renamed Crazy John Stadium in 2003. WAFC Chief Executive Wayne Bradshaw said the naming rights sponsorship was inevitable and would help grow grassroots football in WA. He also hoped the naming rights deal with Patterson's would extend beyond the current term. But this will depend on the WA government, who are considering demolishing the venue and building a new stadium at a different site. Braden Edwards, DHK News.
Telstra's chief executive has played down concerns that the take-up of the national broadband network has been too slow. Richie Lee reports.
The federal government has said the first stage of the NBN rollout in Tasmania absorbed 90% of the budget, but only connected fibre optic cables to 50% of homes. The government had a take-up target of 80%. Telstra chief executive David Thodey said that it is still early days.
Mr. Thodey told a business function in Sydney if the NBN does not materialise, the company still has other alternatives such as its cable and fibre network. He says Telstra's $11 billion deal to sell its fixed line assets to the government still needs to be finalised and approved by shareholders. He denied he had any concerns about the future of NBN. Mr. Thodey said the company has to think of all possible outcomes and hurdles that may arise during the NBN's rollout. Mr. Thodey brushed off a question from reporters about his future at the helms of Telstra, while the share price is falling. The stock hit a new low this week of $2.6 Australian. He says he hopes investors will come to see the benefits of his turnaround strategy for the company. Telstra shares gained 2 cents yesterday to close at $2.66 Australian. Richie Lee, DHK News.
To Hong Kong stories now, jailed Chinese pro-democracy activist LiuXiaoBo has won the Nobel Peace Prize. Beijing immediately condemned the decision, saying it has violated and blasphemed the award. CL Pro has the latest.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee praised Mr. Liu for his long and non-violent struggle for fundamental human rights in China. The committee has long believed that there is a close connection between human rights and peace, but China said the Nobel Committee had violated the integrity of the Peace Prize by giving it to Mr. Liu and warned that ties with Oslo will suffer. The Nobel Peace Prize should be awarded to those who work to promote ethnic harmony, international friendship, disarmament, and who hold peace meetings. These were Alfred Nobel's wishes, the Foreign Ministry said in a statement. The prize puts China's human rights in the spotlight at a time Beijing has sought to play a bigger role on a global stage. In Hong Kong, a group of Civic Party members staged a protest to call on the central government to release Mr. Liu. LiuXiaoBo, DHK News.
Marine police have opened fire on smugglers' speedboats, which attempts to ram the petrol vessels near Shuttlecock last night. The incident occurred after 9 boats were being spotted being unloaded at the secluded beach. 2 officers fired a total of 8 shots when one of the boats headed for the vessels at high speeds as smugglers attempted to flee. No one is believed to have been hit. The smugglers turned back to the shore after failing to break through the police blockade and escape on foot into the nearby hills. Officers wearing bulletproof vests conducted a search of the area with the help of a helicopter. 2 suspects were later detained. To overseas events, the gunmen in Pakistan have set fire up to 40 supply trucks for NATO troops in 2 raids, the latest in a series of assaults on the logistical backbone of the war in Afghanistan. Nathan reports.
The attacks were launched on the same day the United States apologised to Pakistan for a NATO cross-border insurgent, in which US helicopters killed 2 Pakistani soldiers. A US embassy statement said a joint investigation showed US helicopters had mistaken the soldiers for insurgents they had been pursuing. The September 30 helicopter strike was the most serious of recent cross-border incidents involving NATO-led forces fighting in Afghanistan, which had stoked tension with neighbouring Pakistan. Gunmen torched 20 fuel tankers in the first attack on Wednesday near the southwestern city of Quetta. The second attack was in the northwest. A top administration official, Ali Anand Kumar, in the northwestern city of Nashira, told Reuters by telephone there were 15 to 20 tankers on fire and that he did not know about casualties. Pakistan's Express TV and Geo TV showed pictures of burning vehicles. Express and Dunya TV reported that 35 oil tankers had been destroyed. In the earlier attack near Quetta, gunmen opened fire on the trucks and torched them, killing a driver. Nathan, DHK News.
British Prime Minister David Cameron has apologised for failing to warn voters about the cutting child benefits for 1 million families, a shock move that even some of his party colleagues called brutal. Beck Jenner has more.
The idea of taking an axe to the welfare state had appealed to many Conservatives, but the change to child benefits broke pre-election pledges and means some of the centre-right party's core voters will be worse off when it's introduced in 2013. Removing payments from the wealthier parents will save £1 billion, only a fraction of what is required to cut a record budget deficit of around £150 billion. It is designed to prepare voters for years of austerity. It comes ahead of the Conservative leader's closing speech to his party's conference, which will be his first as Prime Minister. Mr Cameron is expected to draw a line under the benefits controversy by offering a robust defence of the need to share the pain of cutting the deficit. At the same time, he will try to reflect the growing demands in his party at the conference, not to ape Labor's definition of fairness based on monetary transfers, but instead to develop a new, broader interpretation. Beck Jenner, DHK News.
Chile's mining minister said a shaft wide enough to rescue 33 miners should be able to reach the men by Saturday. Richard Lee reports.
Lawrence Gowon said that once the drill breaks through, it could take anywhere from 3 to 10 more days to pull the miners to safety. The countdown cannot begin until the engineers determine whether to insert a steel sleeve in the shaft. That could reduce the risk of something going wrong on the miners' way up, but lowering the pipe through curved sections of the shaft could also be risky. Expectations have been high amongst families that a rescue is only a matter of days away, after the country's president said this week that his government was close to pulling the trapped miners to safety. Sebastian Pinera said he hoped to be there in person to see the rescue before leaving on a trip to Europe on October 17. Richie Lee, DHK News.
Divers examined the damage caused by this year's oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico have experienced a curious phenomenon. Nathan has more.
2 weeks after the leaking well was capped, divers noticed that much of the water deep below the surface appeared to be normal, with a wide variety of species of marine life. But 35 miles from the stricken Deepwater Horizon oil rig, the divers saw something strange. In the shallows, approximately 35 feet in depth, barnacles, sponges and a few pieces of coral were entirely lifeless. When they swam closer to land, they found that the dead zone went even deeper. Scientists have expressed concern following the discovery, but more tests are needed to establish why exactly this has occurred. Nathan, DHK News.
And finally tonight, the Russian-made Soyuz rocket carrying an American and 2 Russians has blasted off into space from Kyrgyzstan in the middle of the night. 3 astronauts will be conducting experiments of how crystals grow in space. If the journey goes according to plan, the rocket will approach the International Space Station in 2 days of time. And that's all the news from DHK. I'm Ivan Leung. Look after yourselves, pleasant viewing and good night.